Would you please stand? Pledge allegiance will be Councilmember Cavalier and the invocation.
Please join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may stay standing if you wish, and join us in prayer if you wish. Heavenly Father, give this council the strength tonight to do its purpose for the citizens of Goodyear and for their good. Protect all our people in the workplace, and protect them as they go about their duties. Also, help bring all our men and women that are gone ashore to different countries to secure our nation and keep us safe here. Bring them all home safely, and let's have a Merry Christmas for everyone. On all this we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We get a roll call vote.
Councilmember Osborne. Here. Councilmember Cavalier.
Here.
Councilmember Sousa.
Here.
Councilmember Loretano.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
All councils present.
Do we have any ratify of expenditures? Approving?
No, sir, not this evening.
Well, we'll kick off then with the communication. We have Mark Flynn. Talk about the APS program.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Pizzillo, members of council. It's a pleasure to visit with you this evening. Tonight we're going to speak just briefly about a program that the City of Goodyear has participated in with Arizona Public Service Company and a contractor to APS called Converge. The program is called APS Peak Solutions, and essentially it's a program where the city voluntarily agrees to shed load in the event of an electrical emergency or situation that's called on behalf of APS. Those could be triggered up to 4 times through the course of the season, June through September, and essentially the city agrees to shed whatever load is possible. Our target was 200 kilowatt hours with regard to that shedding component. And as a result of that, we receive a contribution from Arizona Public Service and Converge. I'm going to introduce some folks from both the Converge program and APS who would like to make a presentation to the city on behalf of our successful participation in this program. If you'll join me in welcoming Christy Lizwa, who is the Key Account Manager for Arizona Public Service, Gary Duty, who is the Peak Solutions Manager for Arizona Public Service, Mike Decker, who's the Western Regional Sales Manager, and John King, who's the Converge Account Manager here in the Arizona District. These are the individuals with whom I've worked for the program. Vice Mayor Pizzillo, if you'll join us, we have a presentation to make to you on behalf of the Peak Solutions program. While only one event was called during the summer of 2010, we were able to successfully participate in that program by identifying electrical loads within the city of Goodyear that could be shed at that point in time. We did that by retarding air conditioning, raising the set points on air conditioning units, shutting off electrical pumps and lighting that wasn't in use at that point in time, as well as computing infrastructure that wasn't necessary. The program that individual day ran from about 2 p.m. until about 6 p.m. that evening, and we were able to successfully participate. And as a result of that, I would refer to my colleagues from Converge, who are going to make a presentation to the city in the amount of $5,335.
That's why I dressed it.
Listen, I want to thank all for the effort, and as a former finance guy, money always brings a smile to my face. So again, I want to thank you all for the contribution to the city.
Well, I didn't know how to spell your last name, so I made it up to the city of Goodyear instead.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
This
guys.
is a program we'll continue to work with through the course of summer of 2011 as well. So we're excited about the opportunity. Very thankful for your participation and support of the city of Goodyear and our efforts towards efficiency and sustainability.
Thank you
very
both.
much. A pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
It is. For $5,000.
At this time, call up Mike Fitz. He's gonna give
Mr.
us a
Mayor, Judy Swatanek will go first.
Oh, Judy will go? Okay, sorry. Judy?
Thank you, Vice. Oops, is this on? Thank you, Viola. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Congratulations on your new position. Council members, guests, and John Fishbach, Mr. Fishbach. It's my pleasure to share with you tonight a very brief overview of the volunteer program and its growth and progress over the past 3 years. I started with Goodyear in January 2007 to create and manage the new volunteer program. As you can see on this slide, I started collecting data at the beginning of the fiscal year 2007, and over 3 years, we have collected over 43,000 hours of volunteer service. I know, hold your applause. I know those are impressive numbers, but what's more impressive is if you add up the value of all these consecutive years, you would see that this was a savings to the city of close to $800,000. Now you can check. Woohoo! After this year, our numbers will be over $1 million in savings. There are many ways where volunteers can get involved in making a difference in our community. On this slide, you can see 12 different and distinct areas where Goodyear residents gave of their time to make these programs a success. To mention a few of the noteworthy ones, we had Fill a Need. That's going to be happening this year on December 16th and 17th. I encourage everybody it'll be happening here in the courthouse to stop by and help, or if you'd like to donate money, that'd be great too. Adopt a Park is something that we started over a year ago and is a great success. Gives opportunities for groups and families and churches, Cub Scouts to get involved. I wanted to mention Councilmember Osborne's Youth Teen Council is participating in this program also. We have large and small events. One of our smaller ones is the Heart and Soul Run, where people have an opportunity to get involved. Make a Difference. This was our 3rd year that we participated, and people went with projects. One of the exciting projects that we have coming up that people are coming to me to look for projects, and we're going to be doing a painting hydrants, where I'm going to have youth come out from all the Goodyear churches. We have 5 churches that are involved right now, and so that will be happening in March. And we have Yana, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a PD program. It's You Are Not Alone. And we had people going out to deliver door hangers to let the community know about the program that was going to be coming up. We have GAIN, which is getting Arizona involved in neighborhoods, and where residents help with the planning and running of the event. I want to finish with our ballpark, which last season I had the pleasure of working with the ballpark staff on processing and tracking their volunteers. At this time, I'd like to introduce Goodyear's Director of Parks and Recreation, Mike Spetz, and let him give you an overview of his volunteer program.
Thank you, Judy. Just to connect back for you to our September 20th work session presentation regarding the ballpark operations. Obviously, volunteers are very crucial to our operation. They go through intensive customer service training. They are empowered to make decisions. They help us, ticket takers, security checkpoints, ushers, as well as doing simple things like driving golf carts and getting people from parking lots back to the gate. We had over 200 different volunteers for spring training, totaling 10,000 man-hours, and saving the city over $184,000 regarding the ballpark. A few park and recreation volunteers that always go unmentioned are our volunteer coaches for programs such as Little League, flag football, volleyball programs, as well as some of our nonprofit partnerships that we have, such as Goodyear in Action and the Y. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I guess the next bit of communication, Jeff, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Citizen Jeff Fine. Just came by this evening to introduce the interim court administrator who will be succeeding me at least until the recruitment takes place. I believe he'll be applying for that as well. Mr. Eduardo Cruz, who has been the court supervisor since 2004 and has been with the court for approximately 13 years. Has had his hand in every bit of the operations of the court and is very well qualified to take over operations on an interim basis. So just wanted to introduce him and introduce him to both you and to the citizens of Goodyear. Also wanted to thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege serving the city of Goodyear for 16 years, including 2 years as a reserve police officer when I started in 1994. And in case Mr. Cruz or the judge needs any assistance, as time permits, I have volunteer status with the city, and if they have a question, need me to stop by, I can legally do that now, I guess. So thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm sure Mr. Cruz will serve you well. Thank you.
Next up is the presentation of the Patriot Award. Is that going to be Chad?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Pazil, council members. My name is Scott Essex. I'm with the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. I'm the Arizona chair. The Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, the ESGR, is a Department of Defense agency started in 1972. One of the nice things that we get to do is as employers, do wonderful things and do supportive things for Guard and Reserve members. We're able to come out and make presentations to those employers, and that's our intent today. I just wanted to just do a little bit of a background for you. The theme of the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve is we all serve. And while most of us don't have to jump out of fast-moving vehicles, dodge bullets, in one way or another, when a guardsman or a reservist leaves, it then falls to everyone else. The family members who are left behind have additional duties and responsibilities that used to be handled by two. Employers feel the same kind of an effect, where either someone has to be hired to fill the position that has been vacated for that time, or all of the co-workers have to step up and each takes a share of what had been done by the person before they left. So in one sense or another, we all do serve, and it's a very interesting thing when you start to think about numbers. Many years ago, with World War II, 26% of the nation was involved with the military. We were in a 4.5-year war. In comparison to what's been going on now, when you think about 9 years that we've been in the Middle East, less than 1% of the nation is involved with the military. And less than 3% nationwide of the employers share this burden. So when there's an employer such as the city of Goodyear that is so exceptional, it's a wonderful thing to be able to come out and make a presentation. One of the things that, one of the programs that we have for awards is where a guardsman can nominate their either coworkers, supervisors, departments for a Patriot Award, which is what we're doing tonight. And Rich Borgelli, who is our executive, Butch always does this, and he's the executive. You can be an executive. We're gonna promote you to executive. He's our executive tonight. Rich is going to just read a little bit about why we're presenting the awards tonight, and why it was Staff Sergeant Chad Waltz here, who's with the 161st in the security forces, why he felt and was compelled to make these nominations. So, thank you, Rich.
Here's a little excerpt from the lengthy narrative that...
Pull your mic a little closer. Yeah, there you go.
Because I'm short, right? Chief Mark Brown and the men and women of the Goodyear Police Department have always been supportive of me during any military activation. This was manifested during my most recent 6-month deployment, where they repeatedly contacted my family during my training and deployment to ensure their needs were being met, and that my family knew they were not forgotten. Upon arrival at the airport, 12 officers from my department showed with a large welcome home banner. It was a humbling sight to see so many of my fellow officers in uniform who look who took the time out of their busy schedule to come visit. This effort was spearheaded by Supervisor Sergeant Jason DeHaan. At the airport, my family and I were presented with an envelope of a good amount of money that was raised by fellow officers. Even though I had not even worked with Sergeant Jason DeHaan, when I transferred to his patrol squad prior to my military activation deployment, Sergeant DeHaan kept in regular contact with my wife, ensuring she and my daughter were okay, that their needs were being met, and that they knew they had a shoulder to lean upon if ever needed. Sergeant DeHaan kept in regular contact with me via email while deployed. He continues to be so patient and supportive during my transition back to patrol, offering mentorship and being a true friend. My family and I remain so grateful for all his efforts. Another lady from the HR department, Lisa Adams, with the City of Goodyear Human Resources and all the staff of this division have always been supportive of me and my military service whenever I have ever had a military leave question, payroll question, or issue with benefits. Lisa has always been the go-to person. Lisa is always so pleasant and professional, never dissuaded by helping me with my many questions. The men and women of the City of Goodyear Human Resources Department have always gone above and beyond in superior customer service and making me truly feel like a member of their family. I cannot thank them enough for their continuing support and efforts. For this, I have 3 awards for Chief Mark Brown, Lisa Adams from Human Resources, and Sergeant DeHaan. We have an absentee, the Goodyear Chief Officers Association, that we're also going to present it to it's separate, so we just got this at the last moment, so we thank the association as well. This is a temporary one. I will be sending you the right one by mail.
Sure, go ahead.
Let me adjust this. I'm vertically challenged as well. I'll be brief in my comments. I really don't want to take up too much more time. We hear so many times in the news media, so many times about so many families and so many entities that come together to support us when we go abroad and are able to do what we need to do. But seldom are the times, I think, when we actually have somebody that steps forward to say, thank you for helping really my family, my wife Charlene and my daughter Sedona. Really without the support from Chief Brown, Sergeant DeHaan, Lisa Adams, and everybody in the Human Resources Department, it wouldn't have given me the freedom and peace of mind to be able to go forth and do what I needed to do and get home safely. We had recently, for the Arizona Air National Guard, this Saturday and Sunday, we had a Hometown Heroes event. So those of us that have been on deployment were recognized or honored for our service, rather. One of the awards I put the City of Goodyear Police Department in for was a Center of Influence Award. So I had one of those that I wanted to present that was bestowed upon me, and I want to in turn give that to Chief Mark Brown, really again for his mentorship and his leadership. Really, I've worked for various law enforcement agencies during my 14 years, and I've never ever had such a supportive city or a police department or a leader. So I'm eternally grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we'll take citizens' comments from the floor unrelated to the what's on the agenda. 3 minutes limit on the speaker. Council can either respond to criticism, request that the staff investigate and report on the matter, or request the matter be scheduled on future agenda items. Do we have any?
No,
Nothing?
not for this area.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda is next. Can you read the items on the consent agenda, please?
Item A, approve draft minutes of a work session held on November 1st, 2010, a work session and a regular meeting held on November 8th, 2010, a work session and a regular meeting held on November 15th, 2010, a special meeting held on November 17th, 2010, and a special meeting held on November 18th, 2010. Item B, approve the issuance of a utility easement to Arizona Public Service Company, an Arizona corporation, within the Park and Ride facility located near the northwest corner of Interstate 10 and Dysart Road. Item C, approve the final replat for Palm Valley Phase 6, Perimeter West 1, subdividing approximately 236 acres into 35 lots and 10 tracts, generally located east of Cotton Lane, west of the Loop 303, north of Indian School Road, and south of Camelback Road, subject to stipulations. Item D, 1, accept the Goodyear Police Department and Goodyear Fire Department grant awards from the Arizona Department of Homeland Security in the amount of $80,000 for each department, for a total of $160,000. Item D2, adopt Resolution 10-1410, authorizing the mayor to execute a subgrantee agreement for participation in the Goodyear Police Department and Goodyear Fire Department Urban Area Security Initiative Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear, Explosive Response Team Sustainment Enhancement Grant Program between the Arizona Department of Homeland Security and the City of Goodyear, providing for separability and providing for an effective date. Item E, 1, accept the Goodyear Police Department and Goodyear Fire Department grant awards from the Arizona Department of Homeland Security in the amount of $4,000 for each department, for a total of $8,000. E2, adopt Resolution 10-1411, authorizing the mayor to execute a subgrantee agreement with the state of Arizona for continued participation in the Urban Area Assessment Team's Terrorism Liaison Officer Sustainment Grant Program, providing for separability and providing for an effective date.
Is there anybody from the public that has a question or would like one of these items removed?
Yes, I did get a speaker card from Mr. Roger Matlin for 7A, D, and E.
Wait a minute, say that again,
7A, D, and E.
A, D, and E. Do you have a question, or do you want those removed, Roger? Well, why don't you come on up and to the microphone.
Good evening, Roger Matlin, Goodyear. Actually, well, A, I would like to have removed, and D and E, I just had questions on.
Okay. Do you want to start with your questions on D?
So, start with those questions.
Yeah, we're going to mechanics will remove A by itself. So go ahead on your questions on D and E.
Okay. I had read through the items on the internet that had been posted regarding these two agreements, and they're noted as sub-agreements. And I was just curious why the language is being used as a sub-agreement as opposed to a just regular agreement. And can the police and fire departments be given the funds directly without it having to go through excess administrative levels?
Okay.
The agreement seemed awfully complicated, and it all comes down to they're being given funding in one agreement for the $4,000 apiece in the first agreement. The second one is I think it's $80,000 apiece, but it just seemed overly complicated and seemed like too much of a burden on the city. Why bother doing that? I also just want to know, it notes that this is a reimbursement. So does the city pay for these courses or these activities and then submit a reimbursement? And is there a time frame on which the city gets the reimbursement back from the state of Arizona? Or is this something that we might not ever get back because of the financial problems of the state of Arizona? Is there some kind of guarantee on that? So,
We'll get you an answer. This is D, right? We're talking about?
yes, D and E basically are the same. They're both sub-grant or sub-agreement grants, so it really applies to both. So the same questions for both items.
Okay, Roger, I'll see if we can get you an answer.
All right, thank you.
Sure. You're up.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, and to the council. How are you all doing this evening?
Good.
In reference to the Uasi Grants, I would like to first of all say that we've been receiving these Urban Area Security Initiative grants since 2005. And this $160,000 that we're hoping to receive this evening is a small portion of about $2 million we've already received from this particular grant. And the process is that it will not come directly to the fire or the police department. What will happen is that, and yes, it does need to be reimbursed, but what will happen is we will go out and make the purchases as we have been doing since 2005. And on a quarterly basis, we have to report to the state, which reports it to the federal government. So the money is reimbursed as soon as we make the purchases. We fill out the necessary paperwork, send it through the Department of Homeland Security at the state level, and then the city is reimbursed in that manner.
One of the questions Roger had is because of the state's condition financially. Have you ever had in the past any problems with
Never.
not getting reimbursed? Okay.
No, sir. This is money that has already been allocated. We have a year, actually, to utilize the funding. If we do not spend that, utilize that funding within the year, we can ask for an extension. And sometimes that's due to whether it's price changing or if it's an apparatus, something that may take beyond 12 months to get done, so we can ask for an extension, but we've never had a problem receiving a reimbursement because this is federal dollars coming through the Department of Homeland Security to the state level, then to the city.
Mr. Mayor, Roger also asked about the sub-grantee status, and that's because the state is a sub-grantee. We are a sub-grantee through the state to the federal process.
That is correct.
Okay. Does that answer your questions, Roger? Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the council like to remove any item on the agenda? With that being said, we're going to pull, what, A off, correct? So can you read, I guess, B through?
I've already read them, so you just need a motion in a second.
Okay, all right. Can I get a motion from somebody here?
What is 7A? The minutes. What's
Yeah,
wrong with the
but
minutes?
he's asked to pull it, so we're going to go everything except 7A. We have a motion from Councilmember Sousa. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Osborne. Is this a roll call vote?
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne. Aye. Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Now on 7A, through the minutes, is there something specifically on the minutes there, Roger, that?
I need to announce myself again?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Yes, there was an item, there's a reference in the minutes for the November 15th council meeting, and the reference had to do with a question that I had asked regarding getting some information on landscape numbers that had been brought up at a previous meeting. I just wanted to note, because the city manager states that I wasn't at the last meeting at which it was discussed, and that is true. I wasn't at the November 8th meeting. But there's no discussion of these landscape issues and the questions I had brought up at the November 8th meeting, which is referenced in the November 15th minutes. And the November 8th minutes don't have any reference to it either. So I'm trying to figure out, is there another meeting that he might have been referring to, or a council meeting that just has vanished somehow?
Mr. Manager, is there a way that we
I believe that what Mr. Matlin's referring to is the yellow paper that we presented on November 8th to the council. And yellow papers, I guess, would not be mentioned necessarily in the minutes.
would that be something that, I guess, from a public standpoint, Mr. Matling get a copy, I guess, of those responses, or?
I did forward them to him, but certainly we can get them again.
Will that help you there, Roger?
Yeah, I didn't receive a copy, that's why I'm asking.
Okay, we'll get you a copy.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, do I have a motion to? Okay, we got a motion from Councilmember Cavalier. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Loretano. Is this roll call?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry it. Now we'll go to the business section here. We have a public hearing to consider submittal of a Cdbg grant application and home program fund. Right now, I guess first thing is open the public hearing. We'll have a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Pizzillo and members of the council. The city has been using Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds, and home funds for over 20 years for projects such as housing rehabilitation, water line replacement, the improvements along Western Avenue, and soon some park improvements in historic Goodyear and Northern Subdivision neighborhoods. I'm here tonight to request authorization to submit this year's grant applications to the county for fiscal year 11-12. We are required to hold a public hearing, and council must adopt a resolution authorizing the submittal of the applications. The city would like to submit one CDBG application to continue the water line replacement in historic Goodyear and also install stormwater sewer to alleviate flood conditions in historic Goodyear, which is located just north of the Park Shadows neighborhood and also floods into Litchfield Road. The estimated project budget is just under $600,000, but funds are usually very competitive, and so in the application they do request that the city identify the lowest amount we're willing to accept so that they know if they offered us any less than that, we wouldn't be worth the project. And we have determined that that would be $200,000, which would fully fund the flood drain improvement portion of the project, and since that is very difficult to scale, we wouldn't be able to accept a lower allocation than that. Staff has heard tremendous support for this project from the historic Goodyear neighborhood. We've been in contact with the neighborhood association as well as the Park Shadows neighborhood community. This project is in the CIP and is within the 5-year consolidated plan and is consistent with both those plans. It is important to update council with regards to the CDBG program that the city is currently in violation of what is called the 1.5 rule. And what the 1.5 rule states is that an entity cannot have more than 1.5 its most recent allocation unexpended. And our most recent allocation was $257,000 for those park improvements I mentioned. And so we can't have more than 1.5 times that amount, or $385,000 unspent. And this is actually a requirement of the federal government onto the county, and then the county passes on this requirement to the cities. The city, the reason for that violation, well, first I want to state that the projects are all on schedule. We assign an agreement for each project, and the project is completely on schedule. We're not behind in any way. What happened basically is that we had a higher allocation of $400,000, which is the water line improvements that are currently undergoing in historic Goodyear, followed by a lower allocation of $257. And since the 1.5 is multiplied for that 257, it kind of gives us a short amount to expend. Whereas if you can imagine if a city were receiving similar allocations, say 400 one year and 400 the next year, it would be approximately half of the previous year's allocation. And we've expended 65% of that 400,000, and we are within 2% of meeting that 1.5 rule. We're only under by about $4,000. And next week we're going to be expending an additional $112,000 as they do the roadway restoration. And so on Wednesday, our CDAC representative, Frank Cavalier, and staff are going to be requesting a waiver for this rule since we're really close. We're just right there. We're meeting the intent, and we're going to have it fully expended. We're kind of just a week late, but we wanted to update council of the situation and that it is possible that they wouldn't allow us to submit grant applications if we don't receive this waiver, but we're hopeful that they will see how close we are and that we're meeting the intent of the rule and will allow the waiver. This rule does not affect the home program, and the city is requesting to continue the housing rehabilitation program for low and moderate income residents within the city. Right now is really an important time to continue this program because it is very difficult for residents to get home loans for rehabilitation improvements, especially for our lower and moderate income residents. And so the city is going to request $100,000 in home funds, and there is a 25% cash match requirement, and so we would need to allocate $25,000 of general funds in next year's budget to this program. And so this would create a total project budget of $125,000, which would allow the city to rehabilitate 2 to 3 additional homes. There is no cash match required for the Cdbg program, but again, there's $25,000 that will be required if we submit the home funds and receive $100,000. The applications are due to the county on December 17th, and a public hearing will be held in February to consider the applications, and then CDAC will make funding recommendations in March, and the County Board of Supervisors will act on those recommendations sometime in May. They'll then be forwarded to HUD, and then hopefully in July we will be receiving funds. This concludes my presentations, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Katie. At this time, any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Does it read
Yes.
read by title only?
Adopt Resolution 10-1413, authorizing the submission of one application for FY 2010-2011 Community Development Block Grant Cdbg Program Funds and one application for the FY 2011-2012 Home Program Funds to the Maricopa County Human Services Department and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents relating to said applications.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion from Councilmember Cavalier, second by Councilmember Osborne. Any questions? No questions? All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Osborne? Aye. Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Next up, I assume this one is yours as well?
It is.
Go.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pizzillo and members of the council. Occasionally, the city receives requests to allow for temporary uses, and these temporary uses include things such as Christmas tree lots, tent sales, radio station events and parking lots, and other outdoor events. The zoning ordinance does not allow for or include regulations pertaining to temporary uses. Recently, the city has been using its special event process to allow some temporary uses. However, there are no regulations written for these special events or temporary uses. Regulations for special events are currently being drafted by the legal department and will be included in the city code. However, typically, special event licenses pertain to shorter events that take place on public property, require a liquor license, or require a police presence. They include things such as block parties or parades, whereas temporary uses are typically longer events, take place on private property, such as the Christmas tree lots or Valentine's Day tent sale. And so those regulations belong in the zoning ordinance. With the passage of House Bill 2246, which permits the sale and use of some fireworks in Arizona, staff has seen an increase in calls regarding temporary uses, and so staff has found it prudent to create temporary use regulations that allow for some temporary uses while still maintaining a positive appearance and minimizing competition with nearby permanent businesses. Staff did do research to determine what other Valley cities do with regards to temporary uses. Of the 10 cities contacted, all but one have some form of regulation, and only 2 rely on a special event license. The other 7 cities do have a temporary use permit process, and 4 of those cities use both temporary use permits and special events, which is what we're basically proposing. The time limits given varies greatly, from anywhere from 5 days to 60 days. It just varies greatly on all the regulations among the cities. So staff has proposed allowing the uses listed on page 3 of your staff report or page 5 of the ordinance. When the ordinance was brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission, most uses were proposed to be allowed for 3 days 4 times a year, and outdoor retail sales would be allowed for 14 days 4 times a year. However, Commission was concerned that this would not allow for a use such as a Christmas tree lots, which typically needs 30 days from Thanksgiving to Christmas, and so charged staff with further investigating those types of uses. And staff was concerned with allowing just Christmas tree lots, but not other type of similar uses, calling those type of retail sales out on its own. So staff created the category of seasonal sales, which would allow for outdoor retail sales for 30 days, 1 time a year. And so that would be any type of seasonal sale, a pumpkin lot, a Christmas tree sale, or basically any type of sale that is related to a cultural event or a particular season. Along with this, staff is proposing allowing outdoor retail sales for a period of 10 days, 3 times a year, and that kind of allows 2 weekends and the week in between. And again, those would be for more like the Valentine's Day sale or a back-to-school tent sale that you often see with our permanent businesses. The purpose of this was to allow, we often see our permanent businesses, such as our grocery stores, wanting these type of temporary uses, and we wanted to make sure we supported our permanent businesses to allow these types of temporary uses that they have been requesting of staff. The use of larger tents would be limited to 10 days or less, so the 30-day seasonal event would not be permitted to have a large tent, which would be a tent over 400 square feet or a canopy, which means no sides, over 700 square feet. Staff is proposing that any of these uses would be allowed in any zoning district depending upon performance measures that have been crafted in the ordinance. We felt that limiting to non-residential zoning districts would possibly limit schools and churches, which are often zoned residential, from also participating in Christmas tree lots and fairs and festivals, and might be appropriate. We included performance measures such as requiring separation from residential. If they're using any type of amplified music, they might have to separate further from residential. They have to be dust controlled. Parking must be on paved lots. And also the use has to be freed from code complaints. So if a use locates in an area and we get lots of calls from residents, we won't allow them to locate there again in the future. There has been one exception made for uses that are less than 3 days, are located completely under an arcade, don't block pedestrian access, and are not visible from the street. And the purpose of this was to allow those small events such as Girl Scout cookie sales, or sometimes you see AMVETs doing little fundraisers that often take place in front of permanent businesses, and they don't usually provide competition to our other permanent businesses. They're usually not intrusive, and so it makes sense to allow them. This concludes my presentation. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval at its November 17th, 2010 meeting, and so I can take any questions you might have regarding the ordinance.
Thank you. At this time, entertain any comments from the public.
I do have one speaker card. Roger Matlin.
Good evening, Roger Matlin of Goodyear, Arizona. And on this item, I again read through the documentation online and had a concern with the way a temp use is defined. Because there is no restriction on residential uses, I have a concern that activities can be allowed in areas that might not be immediately adjacent, as it's defined in the documentation, to residential, but still well within a residential area or boundary. And I bring this up because an example is one, and I'm sure Councilmember Loretano will be familiar with this, is a development up in Estrella Mountain that is not built out off of San Gabriel Road, and it is partially improved with some infrastructure, but it seems like it would apply under these regulations that somebody could go there and put a tent up on this site, and it would be plainly visible to all of the neighborhoods and all the homes around it, but still be within compliance. And I don't think it's appropriate that you're allowing temporary uses on residential lots. I'd prefer to see that you define it a little more clearly and not allow temporary uses on residential. If there are issues with churches that are defined as residential, then maybe there's a way of defining that clearly in this ordinance, but I prefer that it not be that way, because there are far too many vacant lots we have in our city that are failed developments that potentially could have suddenly a tent put up on it, and as is defined in the documentation, could have a circus going on there or some kind of huge party going on that's really inappropriate for the neighborhood. In addition, I'd like to see the setbacks a little bit larger. I think the setback requirement was 50 feet for many residential. 50 feet is less than the width of the lot of my home, and I don't think is appropriate, again, in many situations throughout the city. So I'd just like to see that modified to exclude those typical residential lots. And don't get me wrong, I do support Girl Scout cookies and being sold, and I'm glad my neighbor sold me Girl Scout cookies, but I don't want to damage the community, so I'm sure there's a way you can add some language in and set it up appropriately.
Thank you, Roger. Katie, can you address those specific questions?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor and members of the council. We certainly are in agreement with Mr. Matlin's concerns, and it's certainly not the intent of how we drafted it to allow for uses to go on residential lots. We do believe that the way we've crafted it would prohibit it. I mean, we have some general regulations within the ordinance that the use has to be compatible with surrounding uses. One of the biggest things I think that would not allow this type of use to locate in that area is that adequate parking has to be provided, and that parking has to be paved. A residential development that's failed isn't going to have a parking lot nearby, so we would have grounds to deny that temporary use. Furthermore, temporary use has to locate on a surface that is dust controlled, and again, usually these vacated subdivisions haven't been dust controlled in any way, and that has to be a dust control measure acceptable by the city engineer. And again, the use has to be separated from residential uses, so if there is an area where there's a residential house, then it has to separate from there. And so staff is confident that we will prohibit those types of situations from occurring. If for some reason one did slip in, we always have our fallback regulation of any use that receives complaints from from citizens, can also be denied in the future. So if one slipped through the cracks, we would receive calls from citizens, and then we'd be able to use that as grounds to deny it in the future. The 50-foot separation distance was chosen because there is somewhat of a precedent in the zoning ordinance. We require that trash receptacles be separated 50 feet from any nearby residential use because of the potential noise. And so staff just used that figure since, as I said, it was kind of a precedent. Of course, that would just be the starting point. Again, if there was any type of amplified music, such as if a radio station was doing an event, we would see that separation increase greatly. However, staff would be happy to entertain if council wanted to propose increasing that distance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kenny. Question of the city attorney as far as the language is written as such. Do you see anything there potentially that some of Roger's concern from a residential perspective?
Certainly, just echoing what Katie said, I think there's certainly trying to balance the concerns Mr. Matlin raised with a little bit of flexibility, recognizing there are potentials for usage in more or less residential areas. But as Katie stated, there are requirements as far as the surface parking that most likely would eliminate most of the areas that Mr. Matlin brought up as far as being considered for usage under the temporary use permit. It's just whether or not you want to build some flexibility into the ordinance or not. I mean, you certainly could put a residential restriction in there, but that may eliminate some areas that may be appropriate for this type of use. So it's just a matter of whether or not the council wants to entertain having some flexibility in the ordinance to allow these temporary uses. And again, if you look at the various categories of what's allowed, there's pretty limited time periods for most of these categories. I mean, they're 3-day uses, many of them, and seasonal, which they can do once a year, is a 30-day use. So, again, most of these are of limited duration anyway, so that you kind of balance the impacts on the residential area with having some flexibility, plus considering that there is limited duration most of these uses anyway. So that's certainly a policy discussion that council may want to have, and if you feel that you want to just eliminate the residential uses, we can certainly amend the ordinance to do that. And likewise, it's be fairly easy to amend the setbacks as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Can you read by title?
Adopt Ordinance 10-1228, amending Article 2 and Article 4, special uses requiring additional evaluation, non-conforming uses in buildings, of the zoning ordinance of the City of Goodyear, Arizona, adopted May 24th, 1999, as amended, creating a new section 4-4 to allow temporary uses under certain terms and conditions and provide a definition for temporary uses, providing severability, and providing for an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Okay, motion from Councilmember Sousa. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Osborne. Discussion?
I just have a quick question. When an individual who wants one of these permits goes to the city to request them, do they explain to you, or do they have to put as part of the permit whether they're going to have music, what they're going to do, what specific categories, so you have more details to know what's going on, where it's going to be located specifically? Do they give you all that information?
Thank you, Councilmember Loretana. Yes, in the ordinance, we require that they provide us if they're having any amplified music, any microphones or use of recorded music, and we require them to identify uses within 500 feet so we can see what's in the area that might be disruptive. So we believe we've asked for enough information that they have to tell us everything that's going on with the use.
And you can deny that if it doesn't fit the ordinance, or if it doesn't look like it'd be disruptive to the neighborhood. You have the ability not to grant them.
Thank you. First and foremost, the use has to be compatible with the surrounding land uses. So if there were residences really close to it, we could deny it. For example, in the zoning ordinance, I think we require a 500-foot separation between bars with music and residential. So that's kind of a set precedent in the zoning ordinance of 500 feet.
I got one more quick one. If someone were to violate the use permit and there was a complaint, rather than wait till next year, do we have an ability to shut them down if they're violating it, even if it's for the 3 days?
I think I'll defer to the city attorney. I believe so.
I think if they're in violation of the temporary use permit, it would be revocable.
Okay.
Any other questions, Councilmember Cavalier?
Yes. My concern is these vehicular salespeople. I know they come around trying to sell Omaha steaks and this kind of thing. Now, what if we had this kind of thing with some of the other items we're talking about here? They just came door to door. Do we have anything that covers that?
Thank you, Councilmember Cavalier. This ordinance does not pertain to, I think that
Well,
considered
first, I guess,
solicitation.
yeah. I guess I need to know, can we get a permit for a door-to-door?
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, there is a provision in our city code that does require registration, but case law kind of limits what you can do as far as imposing restrictions on door-to-door sales, but we can certainly brief that for you if you want us to take a look at that.
You know, I just thought of that sitting up here, that they could just put it on the back of a pickup truck and whatever they were trying to sell and go door to door. And are we covered by that? Can we keep them from getting a permit if it were something like fireworks?
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, that's not really covered in this ordinance,
No.
nor is it the intent of this ordinance. There are issues with trying to impose those types of restrictions, but we can certainly give you some advice on that.
I think we need to look into that.
We can do that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Osborne.
Well, I can appreciate Mr. Matlin's comment about the 50-foot setback, and it does seem too close to a residential area, especially if it's a sales type of tent where it could be until 9 o'clock in the evening because the parking lot lights are still on. You could have drive-through traffic, headlights bothering the residents. So I can understand why that would be an issue, especially if it was for 30 days. And you can easily say, you got Valentine's Day, you have Christmas, you have Thanksgiving. I mean, somebody could always find a reason to have a tent there, you know. So I do kind of wonder, but then at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, what area in the city is going to be only 50 feet closest to a resident? I was trying to think of an area that could even be, but you know, I wouldn't mind seeing that it was 100 feet myself, because I can see where that could become an issue, but I can't think of where that issue would occur. Do you have any thoughts of where, how far close to a residential area that would be?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Osborne. Typically, especially our newer commercial areas, we do design them to be compatible with adjacent residential, and typically the parking lots aren't adjacent to the residential, so temporary use is, in most of our areas, is most likely going to meet that. I think where you might see it most is a church parking lot or a school parking lot that is within a residential area is probably going to be the most common instance, and those are usually larger parking lots, and they may not mind a 100-foot separation.
Well, I wouldn't mind it being 100 feet. I guess I think that it would be easier if you had the ability to say it needs to be 100 feet unless where the item comes makes sense, then it could be 50 feet. I'd rather give you the leeway at that end. That's just my own feeling. No, I mean, not gross. I mean, it's just got to kind of be, what exactly is it? I'm sitting there thinking it's, I don't know, Valentine's Day, Christmas tree lots, but, you know, you could have a church that sees, hey, you know what, they can rent out their parking lot and make some money for some tent sales.
Councilmember Sousa? Nothing?
No, I had the same observation Councilwoman had relative to what type of business would be appropriate for that particular site that's being requested. And certainly, as pointed out by council, or by representative of this ordinance, is that we know specifically that these questions are going to be asked by the people that are going to be verifying the permit. Consequently, all my concerns relative to that area would be available at that time.
Yeah, I kind of piggyback on Councilmember Osborne. You know, I'm trying to think of an example like she did, and 50 feet does seem close, but I just can't get that picture in my head on, you know, where that is, and I don't know how it would work as far as an amendment, maybe 100, or, and again, it's hard to get a visual of what that 100 would be. I could see, you know, some churches where some neighborhoods would be close, but 100 feet, usually those parking lots are quite sizable, so I would think you could put it in a location that would prevent some of the issues, you know, that Roger had mentioned. So, you know, I'm kind of...
You know, Vice Mayor, there is a couple that I can think of. One is the Safeway parking lot on Indian School. There's an alley that separates that shopping center from the residents. And also, there's a new business area down by the post office on Estrella, that Estrella Parkway, where it is adjacent to the apartments behind it. So you have two areas that I can think of where they are close.
So are you suggesting maybe 100 feet would be...
Well, maybe we need to do something like that. I don't know. 50 feet seems kind of minor, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, the site that Dr. Cavalier just referenced actually has apartments above the commercial. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it is.
What might be best is to approve the ordinance tonight and ask Katie to go back and talk with the Plan Commission about some possible amendment to it that would be helpful. We recommend that it be approved tonight, however, because of the other issue that we're talking about earlier. So,
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think you have some flexibility in addressing those situations when you look at 442D that addresses the compatibility with surrounding land uses. So if it's 50 feet but in close proximity to a residential area, I think there's some flexibility for staff when they get that zoning application or that temporary use application not to approve it or look for a more favorable site. Yeah, or stipulation setbacks or hours. That seems to be contemplated in the ordinance.
Well, I appreciate what you had mentioned about some of the issues we had discussed earlier and the importance of this, but, you know, from my perspective, maybe asked to go back and take another look. If we adopt this tonight, we'll see what happens with the vote. If we adopt this tonight, they'll go back and look to see if, you know, there may be something needed to ensure that that wouldn't be a problem with the 50. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Vice Mayor, council members, if the council would feel more comfortable with a 100-foot separation, I'm having trouble thinking of an instance where it wouldn't be met. So I think if we feel more comfortable with 100 feet, adopt the ordinance with 100 feet. If it poses a problem, we could always bring it back and then adjust it in that direction. Just make sure we won't have any Prop 207 issues and go in the right direction. So
that's true.
I think if we would go ahead and include the 100 feet tonight, if it poses a problem, we could bring it back to you to solve it then.
With that, we have a motion on the table straight up. Does somebody want to amend that motion to how would that read?
You'd make a motion to amend section 446, the proposed ordinance, 446A, and strike 50 feet and change it to 100 feet.
Do I hear a motion to do that?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilmember Cavalier and a second from Osborne. So now we have the amendment on there right now at 100 feet, correct?
Correct. Need to vote on the amendment.
Okay, so we vote on the amendment. Roll call vote?
No, just
voice. Straight up, voice? Okay. Go ahead. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now, we don't have to do anything back with the original? We're done?
You need to vote on the main motion.
The main motion? Okay, the main motion, is that roll call vote?
Yes, it is.
Okay, do I have well, we already have the motion on there, so now it's roll call vote.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne? Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Now we'll go to D on the agenda, Regional Wireless Cooperative Radio Project. Do we have a presentation on that?
Mr. Mayor, we have an item C.
Excuse me, did I miss it? I'm sorry. Professional services contract with Durant for the master plan of Goodyear Operations Center. Thank you.
Thought you were letting me off the hook there for a minute. Good evening, Vice Mayor Pizzillo, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you this evening. Obviously, I am not Brian Dahlke, but I am honored to present on his behalf. Tonight's council action will be requesting approval of a contract with Durant for the master plan and Phase 1 design services for the Goodyear Operations Center. Before I go into the details of the actual project and the terms of the contract that you'll be considering this evening, I'd like to review a bit of the project history. As part of the analysis related to the financing and repayment plan of the City Center project, as well as development of the fiscal year 11 capital improvement plan, staff conducted extensive analysis to identify and prioritize necessary capital projects outside of water, wastewater, and street projects that would be critical to undertake within the next 5 years. As this analysis progressed, it was clear that the city was not going to be in a financial position to sell non-enterprise funded bonds to pay for projects, and there would also be limited general funds available. With those parameters in mind, the final priority projects were identified and proved in the final $25 million fiscal year 11 capital improvement plan. As a reminder, those priority projects included replacement of the city's telephone system, the public safety radio project, and Phase 1 elements of the Goodyear Operations Center, including Phase 1 of the Public Works Operations Yard, the site infrastructure, and the first phase of the Telecom 911 facility. The city owns 96 acres of land on the west side of Estrella Parkway, just south of MC 85. This land surrounds the 157th Avenue Water Reclamation Facility and Public Works Administration building. This site has been identified as a location for the Goodyear Operations Center and is the subject area for the master plan activities of this project. While the Water Reclamation Facility and the Public Works Admin building will remain at this location, they will certainly be factored into the overall master plan of the surrounding property as it pertains to adjacency requirements and boundary restrictions. Note that on this site there are a couple of elements that are currently within the master planning area, and they will be included in the long-term analysis regarding build-out location. These are a BMX park, which you can kind of see is in green, outlined on the map. This is a current lease with the city for that facility, and also there is a dog park, and it's outlined in blue on your map, that has parking and restrooms that are also built out on the site today. The Goodyear Operations Center is envisioned to provide a long-term centralized location for key core operations of the city. These include public safety administration, which would have the police and fire administrative offices, a police impound yard, the emergency operations center, a municipal and public safety training center, the IT data center, public works and park and recreation field operations facilities, full build-out of the Public Works Operations Yard, the Telecom 911 Dispatch Center, a community park to include consideration of elements such as the dog park and also a train park that would include the historic train depot facility, and also the future 801, or also known as the I-10 reliever, which will require about 17 acres of the property for right-of-way. The full scope of the Phase 1 project as approved in the fiscal year 11 CIP includes the full master plan for the area to assist in defining facility acreage requirements, adjacencies for building placement, and prioritization for elements that will ultimately be placed at this location. It also includes design and construction of a 3-acre Public Works Operations Yard, which includes the establishment of a storage yard composed of asphalt and concrete, which will allow for equipment parking and storage, a laydown area for service materials, as well as general storage. Phase 1 of the Public Works Operations Yard will be sited to accommodate future expansion of this area to include fueling stations, wash racks, Public Works field operations buildings, including fleet and garage maintenance facilities, and a central warehouse. Phase 1 also includes a 5,000 square foot 911 police dispatch center, which would also be designed with future expansion in mind of about another estimated 5,000 square feet. And it would also be sited to accommodate the future Public Safety Administration building. Also, as part of Phase 1, we would require the infrastructure such as street water, sewer, dry utilities, data communication raceways, storm drains, and reclaimed water to support the Phase 1 facilities, and also planned with stub-outs to support the future site build-out. The infrastructure design would also contemplate a future central plan. While justification for proceeding with this project was reviewed with the Council as part of the budget approval process, I'd like to spend just a few moments to review this information with the Council and the public. Both Public Works and Public Safety have previously had some master plan and/or facility needs analysis reports completed, and these reports provide important foundational elements regarding operations and facility needs for long-term needs. The first component of this project involves the validation of these existing master plans, as well as the incorporation of other elements that will be at the site at build-out into one cohesive master plan for the area. This process will include defining priority needs for this location. As you saw the list, there are several elements contemplated, and so we need to make sure that everything will fit within that 96 acres. The adjacency and placement requirements, as well as the long-term infrastructure needs. The goal is to provide a framework in the master plan while also providing flexibility, as it's understood that the build-out of this site is envisioned to take place over a number of years. In addition to the master plan, Phase 1 of the Public Works Operations Yard will be completed. The Public Works Storage Yard and Staging Area that was located at the Calle de Pueblo location has been phased out, and the lease has been terminated as a result of increasing costs for the lease of this facility. These functions have been accommodated adjacent to the 157th Avenue Water Reclamation Facility. However, this area is currently not improved and can cause concerns from an environmental perspective in relation to dust control and stormwater runoff. Phase 1 of the Public Works Operations Yard will address these issues by providing paved areas for these uses. In addition, the foundation will be laid for the next anticipated phase of the Public Works Yard, which would include the development of a 2-bay wash rack and a commercial fueling station. These elements will provide opportunities to maximize economies of scale in bulk fuel purchasing, expansion of alternative fuel options, and a centralized location for housing and fueling the city's fleet vehicles. As part of Phase 1, only the site infrastructure required to support those Phase 1 facilities that are necessary will be constructed, only to support the Phase 1 Public Works and the 911 Center. Regarding the Telecom 911 facility, several items emerged defining the criticality of this project proceeding at this time. The current Police Telecommunications 911 Center is in the 1,800 square foot former City Hall building located near Western and Litchfield. It was designed and remodeled as an interim solution for the telecom function in 2004, and it was intended to be used in this capacity for about 3 to 5 years. During the past 6 years, we have continually struggled with issues that make the facility unsustainable for continued emergency communications operations in the city. These issues include insufficient size to support the current level of operations, and as an example, during shift changes, special events, or large-scale incidents, the number of workstations to accommodate staff is insufficient, which frequently results in the supervisor being relocated and thus removed from managing the incident directly. There are continued flooding problems at this existing facility, even with moderate rainfall. Although the installation of rain gutters and sump pumps has occurred, we still find that sandbags are required to keep even moderate amounts of rainfall from flooding the center. The AC system is unreliable and fails often. We continually have to rely on portable AC units in the summertime to handle cooling, even when the installed AC unit is fully functional. The space used to store equipment faces challenges with meeting compliance with fire and OSHA regulations, and also provides challenges with the upcoming equipment needed for the public safety radio project. We have inadequate power distribution spaces. In order to install the uninterruptible power supply, the UPS unit, the unit had to be installed in the bathroom because there was such limited space, which obviously is not a desired location. There's repeated pest infestation, including mice and termites. We have professional pest control services that come in, but there are still repeated instances of these pests crawling across the workstations of the dispatchers. The workstations that the dispatchers work at are in a continually declining state of disrepair. The manufacturer of the workstations is no longer supporting these units. Parts routinely fall off, occasionally during the handling of 911 calls or critical radio traffic, placing those operations at risk. And finally, there's inadequate security and access restrictions at this site. As you know, dispatchers are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and frequently are required to have public contact after hours. The remote monitoring system, intercom, and door controller system are routinely failing, requiring dispatchers to leave the center in order to conduct face-to-face conversations, often with either suspects or irate customers. As part of the fiscal year 11 CIP, the maximum project budget for the Phase 1 Goodyear Operations Center was maximized at $5.6 million. This is an all-in number, which includes the master plan of the entire site, the design of the Phase 1 facilities, construction, as well as the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The funding used for this project includes development fees, $1.8 million of public works fees, and $3.8 million of police department development fees. The value of the city-owned land serves as the required match for these development fees, and no general funds are being used for the capital project. After receiving approval of the project budget through the fiscal year 11 CIP, a request for qualifications was issued for the overall master plan and design services. Note that the construction contracts will come to council at a later time after design is completed. In August, we held a mandatory pre-proposal conference and had 86 people attend, and subsequently we had 18 responses of teams that were interested in bidding on this project. We had an 8-member selection panel that reviewed the submittals, and I would like to recognize the staff for the many hours spent during this evaluation process. And I want to emphasize many. As you can imagine, the comprehensiveness of 18 submittals to go through and evaluate was very arduous. Regis Reed, Brian Dahlke, Mike Ullman, Ralph McLaughlin, Cindy Sheldon, Mark Flynn, Chris Nadeau, and Mike Svets. Also recognition for Susan Rogers, Bob Carrier, and George Provakos, who were our legal and procurement team, who diligently guided us throughout this solicitation process. The 8-member panel read, reviewed, and scored all 18 submittals and came to consensus on 5 firms that would proceed to the interview phase. At this time, due diligence and research was conducted regarding reference checks for those 5 finalist firms and were considered as part of the final selection process. In September, at the conclusion of this evaluation, the panel came to consensus that Durant was our top firm, and at that time we began negotiations regarding the scope of work and fee for this project. The contract that's before you contains 2 distinct areas in the scope of work: the master plan for the entire site and also the design services for Phase 1. Highlighting some of the key tasks related to the master plan are validation of space needs through the build-out to include the anticipated elements that will be eventually located at this site, and also includes a review of the various planning documents that I mentioned earlier that have been conducted previously. A site analysis will be conducted, including the review of environmental reports that we already have on file, as well as determining the need for any additional work. Plotting the locations for all the anticipated elements that are decided to include, including a public safety radio tower that will be constructed at this location, but as part of the separate CIP project that was approved. Also, we will have a general traffic analysis related to the impact of the Phase 1 project, as well as long-term placement of the roadways and access points for the entire site. This master plan phase will also include feedback from area stakeholders, the City Council, and citizens. The Phase 1 design scope of work includes the design of the 911 facility, Phase 1, 5,000 square feet, as well as the 3-acre Public Works operations yard. The site infrastructure, as I mentioned, is only those critical elements that are required to provide access and provide service to those 2 locations. And all of that will be designed as part of this project. The total contract and purchase order amount for Durant associated with this contract is set at an amount not to exceed $864,055. The set amount for the architect's work is $527,835, and the remaining $336,220 within the contract are designated as allowances. What this means is that they are estimates for anticipated work, and the full amount may not be spent. The allowances include $200,000 for Phase 1 civil infrastructure design. Because we currently do not have the master plan completed, the location for these Phase 1 facilities is unknown. Therefore, we can't estimate the amount that it will take to design the infrastructure to serve these sites until we actually know where they're going to be located. So we have an allowance in there of up to $200,000. However, it is not anticipated that that full amount will be expended for that effort. The second allowance is $17,950 for the bid phase. Anticipated activities on behalf of the architect include assistance with preparation of the invitation for bid for construction, as well as responding to any questions regarding specific materials or, during the solicitation process. This work is billed on an hourly rate, and so it may not require the full amount that we've allocated. And finally, $118,270 for construction administration, which include activities such as attendance at project meetings, responding to requests for information, submission of reports summarizing on-site activity, review of change orders, and project closeout services. And again, depending on the level of work that's required based on inquiries that are received, this will be billed on an hourly basis, and so we may not expend the full amount. After completion of the approval and design documents, the construction bidding process will begin, and that contract will subsequently come back to council for final consideration. If council approves the contract this evening, the project team is prepared to begin work this week on validation and refining facility requirements to begin formation of the master plan. You'll see on the table that we have some key milestones outlined for the project. And note that it is anticipated that the master plan will be completed by May 2011 and that the Phase 1 facilities will be designed and ready for construction bidding in January 2012. With an estimated construction timeframe of 10 months, the full Phase 1 project is anticipated to be completed in about October 2012. Once the project is complete, there is some impact to the city's operations and maintenance budget. These estimated increases in O&M costs relate to additional electricity for lighting, access control, and additional equipment, as well as a larger space requiring maintenance. The total net new impact to the city's O&M budget, meaning the increase over the current budget that's allocated for O&M costs related to these functions, is $57,713. These increased costs would be factored in as impacts during development of the fiscal year 13 operating budget. In summary, staff's recommendation is that council approve the contract and purchase order with Durant as presented with a not-to-exceed amount of $864,055. This concludes my presentation. We have Dan Olson and Evan Sokolowski from Durant in the audience this evening, and with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public?
Yes, Roger Matlin.
Good evening. I thought you got rid of me. Well, first of all, thank you for that presentation. That answered many of my questions that I had. I would ask that presentations like that be provided on the internet, on the city website, so that people can know what's going on, because that did answer quite a few of the questions that I had regarding this project. So I appreciate that. One of my questions is basically, there's a section indicated in there that I wasn't aware of, talking about the asphalt and the concrete storage facility. And because of its location that's close to King Ranch, it's also close to Australia Mountain Ranch. And as you know, we have a lot of problems with smell and issues like that from the aluminum facility over there in the corner of MC85 and Australia Parkway. Are those issues going to be addressed prior to a plan is approved for storage areas like that? And is that covered under this contract with Durant? And then furthermore, there is a note that there's approximately $200,000 allowance for a section that hasn't really been defined yet. And I would ask that if it hasn't really been defined, then the city remove that from the contract, because having been a consultant before for a very large firm, you know, those are just ways to milk money out of your client. And I don't think in these times that it's appropriate that it be included there if it's not really defined. And then finally, in the language that was on the internet, the city website, Durant is referred to very casually. It doesn't say what kind of company it is. It doesn't say, it just refers to them like Durant, as if I were calling you Vice Mayor, if I just said to you Joe when I came up here. And I think the city should be a little more professional in its documentation when it's putting these agreements together, or when it's putting together these presentations, so it's clear what kind of company this is, where they're located, and a little more on their background. I went and did some research of my own, but I just felt it was a little too casual, and I don't think that's appropriate for a city that wants to come across professionally. So, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Who wants to address?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
as far as the proximity to MC85 and the problem that we experience periodically with Insumet, this is being built right adjacent to and part of the wastewater treatment plant facility. Now, we don't have smell problems with that plant, and we are not addressing the Insumet smell as a part of this particular project. We continually monitor Insumet. We've just recently had another problem with them. Just the other day, they are always very cooperative in trying to correct whatever is wrong. We are still examining what is wrong with that location, but this project is not part of that, and it is going to be built immediately adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant. So I don't think that's really a concern. As far as the $200,000, I mean, that is an integral part of this entire contract. We don't know yet exactly what's going to be done as part of that contract, but that's an essential part for us to continue to do this master plan and to keep on schedule for the construction of this project. Kim, do you have anything else to add on that?
We were just discussing with the city attorney the ability to separate out the allowance for the Phase 1 civil infrastructure and come back to council with a separate action once those facilities are sited, and then we would have a more refined estimate of what those design services would cost. So we're just trying to define whether or not we can separate that out from the action that you'd be considering today to allow us to proceed with the design of the facilities as well as the master plan activities.
If you had that concern, you could do it either way. I mean, we could break it out into a two-step contract. I think the problem is refining your scope and refining your number. You just want to move forward with the project. Is that my understanding?
Yes. However, I mean, I think it's pretty clear in the contract right now as far as the set amount for the design fees for the architect, as well as some of the allowances for construction administration and bidding. So I don't know if we can break that out.
council had that concern.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo, member of council, thank you. The price of $200,000 for the infrastructure is a not to exceed, and it's based on a worst case scenario. Given we have 96 acres here and it's not master planned, there's a possibility we could end up with these two facilities, the Public Works Operations Yard and the 911 Center at opposite corners. So that given we got a number from our consultant, the maximum number would cost to do that scenario. Of course, as we work through the master plan, we'll do it logistically and consider those factors when we do the master plan. As the two phase one components move closer together, that is reduced. We will not be able to provide any kind of scope or fee at this time, given those parameters. We don't know the actual max or magnitude of the infrastructure itself. It could be broken out into two contracts, and we can come back to you with the infrastructure contract with Durant for this phase of it. We just thought Met staff thought it'd be easier and cleaner. We worked diligently in negotiations. It took us almost 8 weeks to negotiate this with them to find the cleanest and easiest way to present it to council and enter into contract.
What is the full name of Durant?
Everything, Mr. Mayor, is within the budget that we have, and it's all being paid for by development fees. So our recommendation is that we proceed with this full contract at this time.
Well, let's do this. Let's go ahead, and can you read by title so we can get a motion and we can get the discussion going?
Let him answer the question.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Sousa. Actually, to be honest with you, it's as embarrassing as I can be. I've worked with them diligently, but we've only referred to them as Durant. So if I could, Dan, can you help me? I'll let the principal of Durant answer that question for you and give you a little background on their company, if I could.
Who are you?
Thank you, Vice Mayor and council members. I am Dan Olson. I'm the principal from Durant, representing our local Arizona office. And since Roger has asked the question, who are we, I'll just take a couple minutes of your time to give a little overview. Durant is a firm roughly of about 120 employees nationwide. We are an architectural and engineering firm. We specialize in facilities dealing with justice, law enforcement, and courts, and anything dealing with the basis of doing courts, medical examiner facilities, crime labs, you name it, soup to nuts on the justice and law enforcement side. We are a firm that's been in business for over 77 years, and we have one of our largest offices is located here in Arizona, where this project will be basically designed and developed along with Kim and the rest of the staff from the city of Goodyear. Excuse me. Is there any other questions maybe that I can answer at this point that may help you out?
Well, I would suggest again we can read it by title, get a motion on there, then we can move around. We may want to get more into depth on some of the questions that you had specifically.
Thank you.
It's Vice Mayor Pizzillo. This is for a professional services contract. There's no title. The motion, if you want me to read the motion out loud, I'd be happy to.
Please do, and then hopefully we'll get a motion.
Approve a professional services contract and purchase order not to exceed $864,055 with Durant for the master plan of the Goodyear Operations Center site and design of Phase 1 facilities, which would be Telecom 911 and Public Works Operation Yard.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Cavalier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Loretano. Discussion.
Okay.
Councilmember.
Yes, I have so many questions. I'm surprised this hasn't come to us in a work session first, because there's so many things we need to discuss on this. I want to know where we're going with this. I want to know how. I know that we approved this on the budget, but we approved it by title only, and we knew that this was coming, and we knew this was coming before the council. But there are many, many things that are impacted by this. And unless you want to stay here all night tonight, I can stay here and ask questions till I'm blue in the face. But if you want to do that, because there are a lot of things about this that I think needs to be put out in the public and to the council. I don't know if that's agreeable with the rest of the council, but it's quite involved. I mean, it's not just a small project.
Do you have any specifics questions that
Well,
you?
specific questions have to do with, do you have any estimate of the total design, the total cost of the construction?
For phase
do you have-
one?
I mean, that's just one. I could go on down the line here. What will we do with the buildings that the police department is in now, and all those training facilities that they took over in old Goodyear? What will those be used for in the future? Can those be turned over to what some of the original requests were? And the design and paving, is this lot going to be paved first? And the infrastructure, you say the infrastructure will be put in. What does that mean? Does that mean paving the lot where this building will be built? Then the construction bidding, we need more details on that, and how this will lead up to that. There's just so much here. Can you answer all those questions tonight? I mean, there's a lot of detail here.
Dr. Cavalier, we have all the people present this evening, so we should be able to answer anything that you might want to ask.
My first question is, why hasn't this come up on a work session so that we'd have time to really discuss
Primarily
it?
because it was approved in the budget. We had gone into great detail about this particular
We
project.
didn't go into detail. We did it by title and by what this was going to do, but we didn't go into that much detail. We didn't even know where it was going to be, but where it was going to be located. But we knew it was coming. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's too much detail in what's taking place here for us to just say, yeah, go ahead with this, because I want to know where the police department is going with this and where they're going with.
On that, Dr. Cavalier, the only, this is phase one for telecom center. So the only portion of the police station that's being vacated is the telecom center. That's very inadequate today. As far as police training, this isn't addressing the police training. The police training is in the courthouse, the old courthouse,
Yes.
And it's staying there indefinitely right now. So the only thing that's happening is the dispatchers who are working out of an 1,800 square foot facility are going to be working out of a 5,000 square foot facility when this project is completed.
But you say this is phase one. My understanding was all of this is going to be eventually located in that facility.
All of
everything,
it,
training
not,
and everything.
Not in that facility. It will be located as part of this master plan, and that's what we're trying to design right now. And it's going to call for the public safety administration, the police and fire headquarters. It's going to have public safety training. It's going to have public works administration yards. All of that's going to be part of the master plan.
I understand it, and I'd like to see more of that in detail. I mean, I've talked to the police chief, and that's this is what I was understanding, that this is all going to be there. So I'd like to see. I know this is just the design, and this is just the design of phase one.
Yes, it is.
Okay, but where is this going? We get phase one built, and we decided, gee, the city now is getting too large. This isn't going to work. We're going to have to buy another piece of land, start over again. I mean, it could end up with a lot of things.
As you'll recall, the original goals of the city was to, when I first got here 2.5 years ago, the city was interested in acquiring additional 100 acres of land.
Right.
I suggested that we look at the land that we already own adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant, put all of our facilities there, because it was large enough, in my estimation, to handle all of those facilities. The staff looked at that. Cato Esquivel, as you'll recall, was the director of public works at that time. He looked at that, and they came up with this site as a potential location for all of these facilities. That's what we're going to be master planning, all of the facilities being located on this site. As I mentioned, all of the facilities include the telecommunications, the emergency operations center, the police and fire headquarters, the police and fire training, and the public works corporate yards. So all of that, in effect, this is saving the city millions of dollars by doing it in this fashion.
But we need to know that, and we need to know the details on that. I'm in the dark on this. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I don't have enough information to vote on this tonight.
Do you have some questions of?
Well, I had these questions to start with.
Well, let's see what you have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vice Mayor and Councilmember Cavalier. As far as the master plan, we are trying to initiate the master plan process, as Mr. Fischbach outlined, for all the elements that we potentially are considering for long-term location at this site. As part of that process, what we've done to this point is identify the laundry list of facilities that may be considered there. What the contract today is designed to do is to go through the detailed analysis, both review of existing plans that have already been done, as well as new elements that have not previously been defined, and find out what we can place in that master plan. As part of that process, the stakeholders in the area, citizen public input process, council input will be factored in, and so that may be the opportunity. If you're asking for what's the long-term vision, that's what we're trying to define as part of the master plan process, and certainly council will be involved through council work sessions once we kind of define what those elements are, where we're thinking of placing facilities to provide feedback as far as what the long-term vision is.
And that this design element that Durant will do for us is going to provide us with that?
That's the master plan activity, so there's basically two separate pieces to their contract. One is the master plan, which will kind of analyze all of those elements, and then the design of phase one, which we know at this point is only going to be a 5,000 square foot 911 and basically paving of a 3-acre phase one public works yard, and then the roads that are necessary to serve those two elements. The long-term vision, and very long-term because we don't have any other elements currently funded in the 5-year CIP, such as the public safety training, the park, all of those other elements, even the expansion of the 911 center, are currently not even funded. They're certainly for the out years, but we kind of need to know where everything's going to go and outline the adjacencies and those requirements in order to proceed with those two phase one construction elements. So as part of the master plan is kind of the first step that will lay the foundation, and as I mentioned, that would certainly be the point where we would obtain council input and kind of lay out where we're thinking and go into those elements with you as far as here's what we've defined as far as the public safety training facility as an example. It'll include a driving track, shooting range, burn towers, right, things like that. So all of that is still yet to be defined. What the contract is intended to do is bring Durant on board to work with staff. We have planned for subject matter meetings with all those departments that will define all those elements so they can put something together to have that in-depth discussion with the council.
Yeah, because then then after this design is done and after you've gone to all the people you need to do all the analysis, then that can come to us with all the details.
Correct, yes, we would have a work session and possibly a couple different work sessions. If you remember the city center process and the master plan process.
That's what I'm referring to.
It's something similar to that as far as...
Let's not use that as enough, because that was a disaster.
But I mean, as far as the sequence of events, that council would be provided draft master plans before it's finalized, and we would review what those elements are, provide feedback, and then ultimately bring one back for your final approval.
Because this is what I was, in my mind, making reference to. Was since I've been in Goodyear, we've been designing the city center, and I find that they started designing it back in 1983, before I even came. So, and it has all that money spent, and it's been a total nothing. And I don't want that to happen with the chief's police department. Let's do something that's concrete. Let's do something that we can handle, that we get our hands around, and we know what we're talking about. Because this kind of scares me when I see this. This is awesome, and it's great. I mean, we need it, but I'm just worried about how we're proceeding, and I even have to sympathize with some of the things that Roger said. Is this all going to be something that we can deal with that we can keep in hand? So I don't mind the $800,000 for the design. That's not an issue either. But where are we going with it? And you've given me more explanation with my requests here than I've heard from the entire presentation. So that's helped. So you're going to pave all this. You're going to put the infrastructure in for at least phase one.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can live with that. And the result then from Durant is going to be that we'll be able to take his design and we will have a group that will do an analysis of what the needs are, needs analysis, and we'll go from there and begin to build this thing.
Right. The phase one is what will be constructed once we figure out where all the elements will go, what will be placed there, how big they need to be, the adjacencies, and then we'll proceed with the phase one construction. Future phases of construction, as mentioned, are currently not programmed at this time. So this will help lay the foundation for consideration of future CIP dollars and prioritization by the council once we have
So there's enough
that
money
framework.
that in January 2012 we can begin construction of phase one?
Of the 5,000 square foot telecom, as well as the infrastructure and the Public Works Phase 1 corporate yard.
That CIP money is there.
Yes, that's all within the $5.6 million that was approved in the fiscal year 11 CIP.
And $5.6 million will be enough to do that.
Yes.
That was from impact fees, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
All
I
impact
understand.
fees and the value of the land is what's serving as the match.
Yeah, I was concerned about that amount. That seems so small for,
Yes.
for what you're asking for.
And that's been part of the process that we've gone through negotiations with Durant, understanding that we had certain amounts that we had available for master plan activities, for design activities, and the construction was going to cost a certain amount. So all of that has been built into this contract so that the total of this contract as well as the construction contract that will come back once the facilities are designed will not exceed that 5.6 that's been allocated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Dick?
No.
We have a motion and a second. Is this roll call vote?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Second, we got now to D, Regional Wireless Cooperative Radio Project. Who is doing that presentation, Chief?
Yep.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. I'll be doing a few of the first slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris Nadeau, our telecommunications manager, and he can talk about the actual workings of the site itself. Tonight, I want to kind of just familiarize you with a little bit of what the Regional Wireless Cooperative is. It's a partnership of 16 agencies right now that are across the valley, and it's an interoperable, truly interoperable radio system so that communication is uninterrupted, so that you're not going through dispatch centers like we conventionally do. Kind of the project history and looking at where we are with our current radio system. It was implemented in about 1987, and that handled both police, fire, and public works. And then in 1999, our fire department joined the Phoenix Fire Consortium, which is an automatic aid system. We were at that point able to get their frequencies, and it allowed us more capacity so that we could grow that a little bit more. But our original design was to serve us to about a population of about 20,000 people, and we have exceeded that by more than 3 times. In 2004, our police capital improvement project created and funded the current system that we have, or the current proposal that we have now. The original budget was established, and CIP funds, or correction, development impact fee funds were being collected. In 2007, Phoenix Fire advised our consortium partners that they will be migrating to the Regional Wireless Cooperative System, and a deadline for that migration is sometime July of 2011. Then in 2008, the Regional Wireless Cooperative Project plan development detailed planning process began, and a budget and plan adjusted to reflect our financial situation and what we could actually buy into at the time. In 2009, we applied for membership into the Regional Wireless Cooperative, and we were accepted as a full member. We now sit on the board on monthly meetings. And then in 2010, you all approved the funding as part of our CIP project for 10-11 budget, and we're moving through design, zoning, and the contracting process right now. And why do we need this system? Well, we have disparate systems right now. The Goodyear Police and Fire Department can't communicate with each other in the field via radios. And I'll tell you how this works. If we have a situation, a police situation, we need to call fire in and it's not a stable situation, they will stage nearby. It's usually done either through our radio, through our dispatch center, through the Phoenix Dispatch Center, to the fire trucks, or sometimes we'll just flash a flashlight at them to let them know that it's okay to come by, depending on how close they are. But that's how that works. And it doesn't work very well, unfortunately, because there is no communication going on at that time. Also, our police department cannot communicate with other departments in the valley, and we need that on a daily basis. We are on a daily basis, several times a day, interacting with other law enforcement agencies, specifically Avondale, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and DPS. We cannot talk to them. It is all through our dispatch centers and to the units in the field. Again, I'd already talked about the age of our system, well over 20 years old, and in technology standards, that is ancient. Parts are hard to come by, reliability of the system is suspect, and we have had outages when we have our monsoon storms. We've lost channels for extended periods of time. There's also a situation where we've got coverage for this system north of the Estrella Mountains. Now, the thing that makes it desirable to live in the Estrella area is also the thing that creates the challenge for us. When you're talking about radio signals, they go from one site to the other like a laser beam. It's a straight shot. They don't go around mountains or over mountains. So we need to have that ability to put that signal from one point to another. We also have a situation with in-building coverage, and that is throughout the city, not just in the Estrella area. So when we're talking about our officers and our firefighters going into places like the hospital, to big box stores, we are challenged with those officers on portable radios. The issue with that is, as a portable radio, it's a much less powered radio than our vehicle radio, where you got large batteries and large communication capabilities. So when we go into those things, we oftentimes lose radio communications with our dispatch center and other units. So the coverage issue, again, is geographic. That creates the challenge, getting through the mountains. Chris will explain how we're going to accomplish this through the Regional Wireless Cooperative and what we're going to do there. Current systems have little to no coverage in the developing areas of Rainbow Valley, which is where all the development is going to take place south of Estrella, the current Estrella development. Capacity, our current system, again, is close to maximum capacity on this. And with that, I will turn this over to Chris Nadeau.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening. I'll talk about the technical requirements and what we're doing to meet the challenges that the Chief has presented before you. I'll keep it as simple as possible, not to bore you with a bunch of techno dribble. Basically, to start with, we're going to talk about what are the requirements to implement this system and meet those geographic requirements and the service requirements. To start with, after working with Motorola pretty extensively over the last 3 years, multiple engineering designs and a lot of work with the community, we've realized that we can accomplish coverage of our city everywhere north of Riggs Road to acceptable levels. An acceptable level is what's called indoor radio coverage. What that means is an officer with a portable can be inside a standard residence or light commercial structure and be able to communicate to the outside world with a 95% reliability rate. That's a very high standard. It's the standard for the RWC, the regional system. In order to do that, we needed 4 radio sites, 3 of which are pre-existing. One is the prime site. All of these radio systems talk to one central location, which then connects back to the rest of the regional system. That prime site is pre-existing. It's located out near US 85 and I-10 in Buckeye. Buckeye is currently expanding or building a system based on this site as well. So that is the prime site. We will have a primary radio site and an existing tower in Cashin. That covers all of our needs north of the river, basically north of Estrella Mountain Ranch. So all of existing, what is known as Legacy Goodyear, all of those areas will be covered. Estrella Mountain Ranch, or the Estrella developments, will be covered through an existing site known as Crown Castle for the company who runs it. That area is located just east of Estrella Parkway in San Miguel, again, existing site. And then what we found was that Rainbow Valley really has no coverage, no infrastructure, and no sites to use. So that is the one site we have to build from the dirt up. And that has been determined to go to the water reclamation facility already existing out in Rainbow Valley. So talking about that site, the new one that we have to build, the process to determine what location we use out in Rainbow Valley was actually pretty laborious. We worked on that for quite a while. We reviewed 8 different locations out in Rainbow Valley, taking into consideration things such as geographic location to existing and planned developments, coverage available off of that site, antenna heights based upon where we put it, ability to connect that site into the rest of the system. Because again, each tower has to be able to talk to that prime site at US 85 and I-10, either directly or indirectly through another site. By looking at those considerations along with cost, both in operation and in development, it was determined that the Rainbow Valley site was far and away the correct location to site it, especially since it's already an existing city-owned property. So taking a look at the map, what we did, a little fast there on the trigger. This is a graphic representation of what we're going to do. You can see the blue diamond in the blue coverage area is the new Rainbow Valley site. That coverage area, that blue balloon around it, is our anticipated indoor radio coverage off of that site. As you start taking into consideration when the officer is standing out on the street, he doesn't need as much signal, so that balloon gets a little bit bigger. And then when we start looking at mobile coverage, which is the coverage of the vehicle-based radios, that balloon is substantially bigger. But for our purposes, we have to evaluate everything on the in-building coverage, because that's the lowest common denominator that we're concerned about. So that's the blue coverage. The green coverage you can see is off of the Crown Castle site. That basically covers all of that EMR area. And then between American Towers and the Cashin site, you can see all the red space we have. Now that is core off of our system. We're partnered with Buckeye. We have some expanded coverage out in that area because we are working together. And then because we're part of the RWC and we're tied to all of their systems, an officer could use his radio basically from the far side of Buckeye almost out to Tonopah all the way to, realistically with partnerships including Mesa to Apache Junction. So we have a huge amount of infrastructure we're going to be able to access based upon our becoming a part of this and building our infrastructure. Right now, I would guess that the infrastructure costs for the total RWC are in excess of probably $160 million. And so for our portion, we get access to all of that. So physically, what are we getting? Well, first at the wastewater treatment plant, or the water reclamation facility in Rainbow Valley, we get a 120-foot self-supporting tower. Self-supporting means there's no guy wires or any other structures necessary to hold the tower up. It's an open lattice work type tower. For those of you that have been down to the existing police department down on Litchfield Road, similar type of construction as that tower. That height was reached both through engineering and through working with the developers and the citizens community down in that area to determine an appropriate height. Obviously, myself, I want to push it as high as possible. The higher the tower, the larger the coverage area, the easier it is for me to connect to other sites. Developers want to see that tower lower, less impact on the community, so we reached a nice middle-of-the-road point that works for us. With 120 foot, if we bump back here, you'll see that the Rainbow Valley site does not connect directly to the American Tower site. We're bouncing that microwave shot connecting those towers. through the Estrella Crown Castle site. So that's how we solve some technical issues with dropping that tower height. We also get a ground shelter at the base of that. It's roughly 15 by 36. This is a stick-built structure on site. It's not something we roll off the back of a trailer. It does sit inside the confines of the water reclamation facility, and that's what houses all of the computer equipment and radio equipment necessary to make this more than just a piece of steel sticking up out of the ground. It also includes generator, battery backup, security equipment, air conditioning, heating, all those things necessary so that it's a secure and functioning site, pretty much irregardless of what happens to commercial power, heat, all those other things. Quick idea of what it's going to look like from a space planning idea. There's an existing water retention basin there. We're going to sit right up on the edge of that so that easy access to the road coming in for maintenance and support of the facility, yet we're out of the way. We don't impact any future growth of the water reclamation facility there. So for purposes of this entire process with the community meetings and meetings with Newland and the other developers, we did a lot of work with photo simulations, what it looks like now, what it's going to look like. Rather than present you with stacks of photos, we took sort of the two that had the most impact and put them in this presentation. First is a close-up view of roughly what the tower is going to look like. That's a really good representation of the 120-foot tower to scale. You can see antennas and a microwave shot. That's roughly what it's going to look like out there. The detailed design, the actual architectural documents will be delivered to us as part of this contract to Motorola. The company that Motorola is going to subcontract this to, a company called Patriot Towers, has built multiple towers across the valley. They're a very well-respected company. This is what they do for a living, and they're the ones that came up with these mock-up for us. In addition to that, we took a pretty broad stroke at looking at what this is going to look like to the community from their backyards, their homes, the golf courses, the roads in the area. And we actually did a survey 360 degrees around the site, varying from as far away as 2 miles up off of Cuyahoga down to the closest one, which we thought was the most appropriate, which is a point 3/4 of a mile away. That is the closest that currently any development is underway or platted at this point. And you can see on the map here, it's over near Canamia. This was the closest, most impactful area we had. This is what the view currently is, and that's what the tower will look like when it's in place. So the concerns are justifiable, but we think this indicates the minimal impact it's going to have on the skyline.
Configuration here is based on 120 feet or 250?
This is a 120-foot picture.
Later on, I have some questions for you. Go ahead.
Moving on, we've talked about the Rainbow Valley site. We have other sites in question. What are we putting in there? Well, at 3 of the sites, the Cashin, the Estrella, and obviously at the Rainbow Valley, in addition to the tower and the shelter, we have to put equipment in place to make it an actual radio site. That includes radio equipment, antennas, lots of computer equipment. This radio system and modern radio systems are probably more computer than they are radio technology. And then all of the network and microwave equipment to make it all communicate back and forth with each other. At the 4th site, which is the American Tower site, that prime site, which is the linchpin between us and the rest of the system, we don't have to put any radio equipment in place, but we do have to put in network and microwave equipment to tie our system to the rest of the system. Budget. This project was approved many years ago. I want to say off the top of my head 3 years ago. 2 years ago we approved the budget by council, so you approved the budget for us. At that time we set our estimated budget at $7.1 million for the project. We have developed between fire impact fees and development impact fees and then the required 29% CIP match. We have just a little over by about $30,000 over what looks like we're going to be spending on this project. So we budgeted pretty tight. Right now, tonight, the portion of the budget that we're looking to see approved is $4.4 million. That covers the construction of the Rainbow Valley site, the tower, the shelter, all that the generator equipment, the infrastructure that goes along with it, and then the radio equipment spread across all the sites that I've talked about tonight. Coming back to you later as part of the communications center that was just presented to you as part of that phase 1 build out the public safety site is more radio equipment. Obviously a communication center without radio gear isn't much of a communication center. We have that money in here. It's more related to radios than it is the building, so we put that money in here. That money is identified, and then some infrastructure and contingency funds make up the total sum of our budget. Project timeline, as you can see, we're about midway through this process. We've been going at this for a while, working very closely with Buckeye on this because we're sharing that American Tower site. We did go through the planning and zoning process. I believe the item after mine is the special use permit for the tower to go in place. And following tonight with hopefully your approval on the contract awarding, we finish up detailed design and then immediately move to construction, both of the Rainbow Valley site and infrastructure implementation. That takes place really over the course of about a year, a little over a year. We then have a sort of a break in the process as we wait for the construction of the communication center to come online, at which point we build the site of the communication center. We'll be coming back to you at that point to award the contract to build that radio tower site at the communication center. The portion tonight is all part of that. However, the portion tonight also is allowing the fire department to meet the mandate set by Phoenix Fire and the Fire Consortium to be able to be dispatched over the new system. My communication center is police operations. The fire operations, once we meet all the mandates and the scope of work for this particular project, their needs will be met. So we sort of split it up that way. It works really well for everybody. Gets fire sort of ahead of the police in what they need to meet because of the consortium. And with that, my presentation is complete. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Chris. Can we get a motion on the table? Oh, excuse me. Any comments from the public? Do we have any cards?
I don't have any cards.
Okay, can I get a motion? Okay, we've got a motion from Councilmember Osborne and a second from Councilmember Sousa. Discussion?
Is this on both 1 and 2?
This is on the 1.
So this is the motion for the $3.3 million?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
And I guess they kind of intermingle all together. I know that you were able to come to, I guess, some consensus with Newland regarding the height of the tower. However, as you were showing, I need to have some better understanding.
Sure.
Okay? I mean, I saw the 250-foot tower for, imagine that your blue bubble was much bigger. How far did that blue bubble go towards Mobile? Currently, if you stick with the 120, obviously we're not hitting Mobile. So, did the 250 hit Mobile?
The 250 did not hit Mobile.
Did not. Okay.
The impact of dropping from 250 to 120 was about a 20%, 25% reduction in area. So it didn't dramatically affect our ability to provide services down there whatsoever.
How many towers in the future, because of this dropping, will we have to have for connectivity in the future?
With the current city limits, as we have now, we're looking at between 1 and 2 towers to connect existing Goodyear down through the Mobile area and the Vico Valley area is still sort of gray as to how much coverage we need in there. But if we had gone with the 250 here, some engineering realized we would still need between 1 and 2 towers to connect down to Mobile. A lot of that depends. There's a lot of state land in between Riggs Road, basically, and Mobile that we may be able to cover everything with one really big tower, 250-foot tower, somewhere south, obviously, drastically south of where we're talking now, possibly in that state shared land area.
Was there I'm trying to figure out why exactly issues was that we were finding revenue by having different, I don't know, cellular companies, whatever, being able to commingle on ours. So are we losing revenue by going down to, or that opportunity? Is that lost? And I'm just,
Sure.
trying to understand why between the two. So, and I know we don't have a choice on that, but I mean, I'm seeing this. It's a pay me now or pay me later type of scenario, and so that's why I'm wondering. Was it really the fact that what we go buy? I don't know how we go buy an acre somewhere further so we can have the 250 feet. I'm just seeing if it makes sense this way.
Certainly. First, we'll start about where 250 came from, where 120 came from. The reality is, looking at the map, between the Rainbow Valley site and the American Tower site, there's a small ridge, an extension off the Estrellas that runs through there. Engineering determined that in order for a tower, really anywhere in the Rainbow Valley area, to directly see the American Tower site, it had to be 250 feet tall at a minimum. So that's where we came with the 250-foot specification. Then doing some additional due diligence, how low could we get the tower and still be able to connect into the system? Well, that's 120 feet in order to make the connection to the EMR site. So as far as where those two heights came from, that's where we came to on those two. So after doing some work with Motorola, I was initially concerned about, is the relay through the Estrella Mountain site as reliable as a direct connection off the 250-foot? And Motorola has assured us that with the equipment we're using and the design of the system, it is just as reliable, what they call a 5 nines, which is a 99.999% reliability of the system, either way. So upon that decision, it was, okay, we can go either way. A 250-foot tower would cost us somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 more for that extra 130 feet. So we started taking that into account. The desire and input we received from the community regarding 250 foot over 120. And then lastly was the impact to the coverage. Once we realized that, one, the public safety coverage dropping from 250 to 120, again, was only 25% reduction in space. It didn't seem very fiscally responsible to spend that extra $800,000 for a minimal return. Then in regards to the cell providers, we still plan and can offer the 120 foot to market to the cellular providers. Most of them are used to being restricted to around a 60, 70, 80 foot tower. So us being able to market them at the 100 foot level is a big boon for them. So it doesn't hurt us at all. And realistically, in some offline discussion with the cellular providers, they have problems if they go too much higher because they get too much coverage from that site, and then it starts affecting their ability to provide capacity to that location.
Well, safety obviously was key first and foremost. And now one last question, because I don't understand the technology, but if I know you're having to go to the EMR site and then over to the American Tower site, and you're saying that you're sharing that site with Buckeye, correct? So neither the city nor Buckeye owns it, but is there going to be, as the communities grow, will there be conflict of using that tower because of such growth?
My answer to that would be no. We will have leases in place with American Tower similar to the leases we have in place with the EMR Crown Castle site. That's all taken into consideration. As Buckeye grows, their needs for the area that American Towers covers are met with the existing facility. Our needs there are minimal because we're only passing a signal through there. As Buckeye grows, they will have to build new towers, as we will down into Mobile.
And I'm sorry, one last one. Since you did go with the smaller tower, and originally when we budgeted the CIP, it was for the 250-foot tower, correct? So we have some savings of some money then?
I would love to say yes, but no. We actually budgeted for a roughly 120 to 150 foot tower. Had we gone with the 250, we would have been eating a huge percentage of our contingency funds. Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Kevlar.
A couple of things on there.
area west of Rainbow Valley Road, I thought that was our planning area. That's a Buckeye planning area?
Directly west of Rainbow Valley Road is our planning area.
How far does that go? I mean, I can't imagine Buckeye being a part of this.
I believe this drawing here, and it's hard to reference scale, but it's about 3/4 of a mile, my understanding. I can't speak to the definite size of that. I don't know if we have the right people here in the room tonight to talk about that.
That's okay. I just assumed that was our planning area west, and I didn't know how far west either.
It is, and this site will obviously cover that area with no problem.
That's my other question here is, in your estimated costs, you have 15% from the contingency fund. That's from our contingency, general contingency fund?
No, sir. That's built. Our contingency is part of the project. That money comes out of these development impact fees. We plan that as part of the project.
Doesn't come out of our...
No, sir.
Okay.
Councilmember Sousa?
Yes. I have the same concerns expressed by Councilwoman Osborne about what was the decision made to go from 250 to 120? That concerns me.
Certainly. We looked at, like I said, both the operational, i.e. safety to the officer impacts, the financial, and in partnership with the community. We really want the community to support this. Once we looked at everything, our biggest push, which comes from me, I'm the project manager on this, my biggest push on the 250 over the 120 was that connection between the Rainbow Valley site and the American Tower site. Everything else was sort of a wash. Once we realized the reliability of this system is the same whether we bounce that signal or have it direct, was met, my concerns were alleviated. The rest of it was just a win across the board to go to the 120. It impacts not at all the safety to the officers working in that area, especially when you consider that already when you look at this coverage map, pull it back up here, it not only covers what is currently planned development, but as much development as is currently on the books for that area over the next 10 to 15 years, I'm told. So having the 120 doesn't hurt us at all. We would have to have another radio tower to make that connection to Mobile anyway, and likely it'll go on state shared land where we can put up a 250-foot tower and move that eyesore out of the development area. So those things all taken into consideration along with, again, the financials, it came to be an absolute win. One of the things I will say is that all of these sites, in addition to these microwave links, have buried cable telephone lines as a redundant backup to that. So even if the Estrella Mountain site were to blow up, fall over, whatever it happens to be, we still have connection from the Rainbow Valley site via these backup buried cables. So that's how Motorola is able to provide that 5 nines of reliability in the system.
Well, you know, you say that the developers in the area went along with the 250.
No, the developers had concerns with the 250s.
Not according to what is stated here. Let me read this to you.
Oh, okay.
A representative of Newland Communities and a representative of Cantamia Development attended the Citizens Review Committee, as did 2 residents of the Australia community. At that time, the city had proposed 250-foot towers, and the residents had no objection to the 250-foot radio tower at the WRMF, and one wanted only to confirm that the tower was tall enough to accommodate commercial cell service providers to offset tower costs and reduce the need for separate cells, et cetera, et cetera. The representatives from Newland and Cantamia did not voice any objection in the public meeting to a 250-foot tower. Why did you go from 250 to 120?
Following that, do you want to handle it, Chief?
Yeah. Vice Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, that's an excellent question. They didn't voice any opposition at the meeting. Later, they did voice opposition and said that there was because of the deed restriction that was on the site where we proposed to build it, that they would not waive that deed restriction. But at the meeting, they did not voice.
But they committed themselves to that.
Well, at the meeting, they didn't have any comment. So there was no opposition. There was no support.
Mr. Mayor, there were only 2 residents at that meeting in addition to the Newland representatives. The 2 residents did not object. They supported the 250-foot.
Well,
Newland, however, did not speak.
But according to the comments that are made here by staff, okay, Newland and their Cantamia did not object to the 250-foot tower. And I'm saying, why all of a sudden did we decide to go from 250 to 120? I'm concerned, you know, regardless of what Motorola says, that if it doesn't work, what are they going to do? They're going to add on to the 120 and go to 250? Or what? Or we're going to have to build another tower in place of this one?
Vice Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, we're confident with the engineering that was done by Motorola. We think that they're very competent. They do this all the time. They do this all over the world. We're very satisfied with the product that they've provided to us and the advice that they've given us on this.
They also used to be in the city of Phoenix, too, big, but they're not there anymore. I'm concerned about this, gentlemen. I really am. There's no question in my mind that you need this facility. And I'll back you 100% on that. But I'm really concerned about, you know, going from 250 to 120 to be effective. That's really basically my concern. There's a big variance between 250 and 120, 130 feet, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Vice Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, in looking at that, our concern was that too. But with this level of public safety standard, and this is a nationwide standard for public safety radio systems, there has to be a certain amount of robustness and a certain amount of redundancy that's built in. We have that with 120 feet.
We shall see. Thank you.
Councilmember Loretano.
Most everything's been covered. I just have a couple quick questions. On your coverage map, there's areas in the blue that seem to be like kind of cut in, and one seems rather close to where the tower is. What is there?
There are vertical obstructions, hills, rises in the terrain. Like the chief said, the radio signals coming off of a tower are like a flashlight. The direct beam is the coverage we're looking for. If I were to put up the coverage, and I believe I have it here, of what's called on-street or vehicle coverage would look like, the infill, there it is there, it's not color-coded, but you can see the center point there in Rainbow Valley. That bigger circle, that is the vehicle coverage or on-street coverage, and you can see it's all filled in. So Motorola, when they do in-building coverage, they are very anal about making sure that claims they make, they can support. So that in-building coverage diagram, if there's a bump in the ground, that is built into the algorithms, and if it's high enough, they put it as a shadow area.
And just briefly, I just want to make sure, because I've heard this a lot coming up here. The triangulation, or however it's going to bounce off the one tower in the middle in Estrella and then go over, will that cause any delay whatsoever time-wise in response time at all in the radio system?
No. The system is just as fast bouncing that signal around, and without getting into a lot of the technicalities of it, bouncing that signal around the way it is doesn't even affect the coverage in that particular area, because they're still talking and communicating off of that site. So it has no inherent lag built into the system.
I'm okay. I have no further questions.
Councilmember Osborne.
One last question. So feasibility-wise, you said that a 250-foot tower costs how much more than 120?
Between $600,000 and $800,000.
That much?
Yes, ma'am. In addition to.
For only 25% more coverage.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, I see Larry's not here. You might not have that question, but there's been some discussion on development fees, allocations and that type of stuff I've been reading about. And we have this allocation between the general fund required match. I assume, probably the manager may be able to answer that. That's the part from a state statute standpoint that we have to match, because that deals with current residence uses versus growth. Is that my understanding what that is?
That is correct, and we have verified all of this with Chris from Tisch Beisler.
Okay, I appreciate that. Second thing is on that 150 or 250 to 120, from a product warranty standpoint, when you buy a car and it says it's supposed to do X, or you buy a radio and it says it's supposed to do Y, and it doesn't do X or Y, I mean, is that some of the type of deal, because they promised delivery of that we'd have some recourse if it doesn't deliver that deal?
Vice Mayor Pizzolo, yes, most definitely. We're just finishing up the contract negotiations. That was a big part of it. It's a 57-page contract for the infrastructure to include that coverage, and it's very specified. They will provide that expected level of coverage, and what our recourse is should they not. Perfect.
With that, can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No, the ayes have it. Second on here, the award contract in the amount not to exceed $1,100,000 to Motorola for the construction of Rainbow Valley antenna site pending final approval by the Goodyear City Attorney. Can I get a motion on the floor? Motion by Councilmember Osborne, second. Councilmember Cavalier, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
No, we're good. All right, next we have, item E, special use for wireless communication facility in the Public Facilities District.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm here to speak to the special use approval for the tower. The special use approval criteria consists of compatibility with surrounding area. In this case, it's the Rainbow Valley Water Reclamation Facility. Beyond that, the future expansion of that facility, and beyond that, future business park development within the Montecito development. The other criteria is also conformance with the general plan. The property has a land use designation of light industrial. This is one of the most appropriate areas for a facility of this type. Upon a recommendation from the Planning Department, at its November 17th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission concurred that the special use criteria had been met, and they recommended by a vote of 6-0 that the City Council approve the special use. So tonight, both staff and the P&Z are recommending that you approve the special use for the tower.
Do we have any comments from the public? No? Can I get a motion, special use for a wireless communication facility in the Public Facilities District?
So moved.
Well, I guess motion from Councilmember Cavalier, second from Councilmember Sousa. Discussion? Seeing none, can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Down to the information items, comments, commendations, reports of current events, and presentations by the mayor, council members, and staff. Do we have any comments?
Current events?
Yes. Let's shoot. Go for it, Councilmember Osborne.
Share with you.
Go for it.
Very quick. Just want to let you know on the YMCA side that we have narrowed down to 4 people for the director position. Just want to let you know that. I attended the great event for the Goodyear Employees Appreciation morning Tuscany, and that was very nice. And I'd like to congratulate all the outstanding employees and their awards that they received. And I attended the home plate for the holidays and the tree lighting ceremony, and it was a beautiful tree. And I wanted to say that adding the schools coming in with their choirs to sing really added to the, I think, intimacy and just bringing it more hometown feeling. I also attended the West Valley Reality Check, which was sponsored by the Arizona Land Institute and Leadership West, and that was dealing with land usage and our future growth. And lastly, now this one I have a few things. Okay. Lastly, both Councilmember Loretano and I attended the Global Arizona 100. This was quite a conference put on by the Arizona Science Foundation and the Morrison Institute for Public Policy. Issues that we focused on was not only the educating of Arizonans K through 20, but also educating our government leaders, our business leaders, in knowing that we live in a global economy. We focused on Arizona exports, strategic global planning, promoting collaboration, building intellectual capacity to sustain global commerce in Arizona. We discussed creating a launch pad for attracting and developing global entrepreneurs and showing the world that Arizona is open for business. We also discussed creating an Office of Foreign Direct Investments and more. So that was, I wanted to share with you guys because, you know, that's really what Goodyear's about, bringing in business, and I think at a macro level for the state, this is really going to be something that will help us for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavalier? Councilmember Souza?
Thank you, Mr. You know, 2 meetings ago, we passed a sign ordinance, and I had reservations then about how effective this is going to be. And all you had to do was go drive down McDowell Road the other day, the weekend, for example. And one establishment had 4 of these wavering signs. It's on his property. There's an A sign sitting on a sidewalk, okay, in front of this nail establishment. Okay. Code enforcement, where are we? Thank you.
Councilmember Loretano?
Yeah, I also attended the Global 100, and Joanne really covered it very well. What I really took out of it is how well Goodyear is doing and how we really are seeking some of those investment. When you were talking to some of the other people from some of the other areas of the community in Arizona, that with Suntech and some of our other work that our city staff has done, we really are getting leaps and bounds and kind of head and shoulders above the rest. So I was very proud of Goodyear. Goodyear also hosted, along with the Southwest Faith Community, a domestic violence awareness presentation, and I want to thank Parrish for his work on that. We had the chief presiding judge from Glendale, Elizabeth Finn, who's pretty much an expert in this area, speak, and people from the New Life Shelter. So I thought that was very interesting, and that's an issue that's kind of dear to my heart. I also attended the Home Plate for the holidays, and my little kids were so excited to see Santa, because they're 6 and 8, to see Santa come down on the fire truck. I explained to them, as we all know, because we had been up at Estrella's whole holiday celebration earlier, that Santa did take the fire truck, and we thank Goodyear for bringing Santa down from one celebration to the other. We know he was busy, so thank you very much. And they also got to help light the Christmas tree. So thank you very much, Vice Mayor.
And again, I was there at the Home Plate for the holidays, and I guess one of the perks of this job was to, because I'm a kid at heart myself, is to be able to hang with Santa Claus and see the glee of all the kids' eyes when Santa got off the truck. I mean, I don't know what the numbers were. I heard somewhere around, was it 5,000, Mike? 5,639. Yeah, there you go. I mean, I know it was heavily attended, and it was a great event. So, tip of the hat to the crew, and again, the volunteers that were there. All pleasant, all the experience had with them, and a tip of hat to them as well. With that, manager summary of current events and reports.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Staff summary of follow-up action required.
I will be following up on Mr. Sousa's request about the signs and code enforcement, and I believe that's the only item for follow-up.
Anything else? Have one.
I don't get up that way very often. And everybody, you know, I think wants to blame our water treatment center. And I just wondered, do we have, I know we don't really have any regulating authority on this, but is this something that when we have these continued circumstances that we report them and
Yes, we do. And we not only report them, we follow up with and submit themselves to see what happened in their operational procedures. I have not gotten a report back from that follow-up yet, but we do report it, yes.
Well, I have in the last probably week and a half been around there twice and smelled
Wait a minute, we got to find that out.
No, it's not. No, to add to that, we've had problems with that for a long time. And you have the most smell and the worst problems on weekends because that's when they put the dirty stuff through. And they crank that way up. They're only supposed to be at 65%. And on weekends they crank it up and they are re-refining the pile of slag that's there to get more out of it because they're new technology. They can get more whatever they get out of it, the ore, the metal. And what they're doing is cranking it up on weekends and at night during the weekends because the State Department does not work on weekends. So we have to call them, and they'll send a guy out. He'll plant himself down on a Saturday night. And you do that once, and he'll see what that is, and they'll get fined again. But they don't care. Fine them, they pay the fine, and they go on doing what they want to do.
Thank you. We'll sure check on that, Dr. Calvaler.
Any direct inquiries, council members, to staff?
Not to staff, but I thought sure as the devil there would be a full house of residents north of I-10 here this evening. I just got my water bill and sewer bill. 60% increase in my water bill. 40% increase in my sewer bill. Now that is banditry in the first order. I don't know how the Arizona Commission let this thing go through. But I'll tell you, this council has not heard the last of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sousa. Future meetings, December 13th, regular meeting 6 p.m., January 10th, 2011. Coming up, a regular meeting and a special meeting on the 24th of January. We have a regular and a special meeting. With that, meeting adjourned.